around this book. And what I want to do is introduce some of the more of my understanding has changed over those last 2 years. Because what I'd really like to talk to is not so much, well, I will be talking to you about anti-consumerism and deconsumerism as part of the chapter called Us. But I really want to talk about systems change, and more importantly, the realization and a group of work I'm doing about how do we change systems, because one of the things that certainly saw at COP and beyond is that people understand the need for systems change. We say there is a fundamental problem with the global food system, for example, the way that we clothe ourselves. Malcolm is just a great example of the systemic problems that we have with house building. But what we're not quite as good at is coming up then with, okay, having coherent plans of how you change systems. And there isn't, of course, lots and lots of really good evidence on how you change systems, lots and lots of good research on how you do those, but I'm not hearing those quite come through, certainly not into policymakers. Otherwise, we would stop giving money away to volume house builders. We would stop thinking that we can sort out poverty in Scotland by doubling a rate of a handout. And instead, they would dig at the deep institutional issues that are causing poverty and causing energy poverty, for example. So I want to talk about anti-consumption as systems change. And I'll come back to that, and then also very much address the how as part of the making it happen section within the book, and then maybe the role that I'd maybe challenge some of you to take on. So taking us back, all greenhouse gas emissions essentially can be traced back to two sets of demands: those of us as private citizens, and those are demands and expectations for the goods and services of government. So everything boils back down to these things. But we're talking about anti-consumption and maybe changing our relationship with consumer goods. I'm absolutely not suggesting that we are making bad choices. In some ways, of course, we are. We have some agency within here, but this is a game that's stacked up against us. We are pawns in this system. With the system's goal of GDP growth only works if we are out there buying, if we are out there consuming. So all of this notion of increasing people's understanding, increasing people's knowledge, and expecting them to change their behaviour around what they buy and where they buy is what the Aussies would call a Furby. It's not. It's a sleight of hand. The issues that we have to deal with here are, as many of you know, institutional and structural. So even though I'm going to be talking about anti-consumption in some ways as an agentic action that we should be looking to spend our lives in different ways. The greatest scarcity that we all have here, I suspect, universally, is time, not money. We will all spend our last minute. Very few of us will spend our last penny. Okay, so what we really have is how much time, what we do with the time that is available to us. But this has to be making the point of the age. This is a structural issue, and one that we have to address at a structural level. But okay, there is some agency involved. When we look to see what the solutions are for our dysfunctional relationship, our wanting more and more, then I think the answers can be really quite positive. If we break down why we consume, every one of the reasons why we consume can be provided by goods and services that aren't new, by goods and services that are not part of the market. So of course we buy goods and services for the utility they provide us, the warmth of a coat, for example. But that was kind of marketing and business in the 1940s, 1950s, maybe a little bit into the 1960s. And then the most powerful piece of consumer research in the last 30 years really made explicit the importance of identity and social identity within consumption. This is not a new idea. Torsten and Verblin talking about it 2 centuries ago, but very much in the mainstream marketing literature came forward into that we consume because or how it extends ourselves because of the identity it allows us to create. And of course, because we can just keep putting things on credit cards, for many of us, we can just keep being a new person, keep changing who we are to something different through using the consumer goods that we have. We also consume for the experience, the experiential consumption of, going to a festival. I'm just back from 5 days walking the West Highland Way in 5 days. The experience there in the last 5 days was wet and cold and footsore, but it was a wonderful experience, and we consumed that, we brought that into it. All of those things don't need to be provided by new stuff. And I think that's the most important thing. We are hugely flexible beings with many inbuilt flexibilities. The ability to get through a scarce winter is something that allows us to be flexible in how we satisfy our needs. So all of the utilitarian, identity, group reasons or experiential reasons, all of these things we can provide for ourselves through participation, through the circular economy, through building your identity, through the skills that you have, and using those wonderful areas that Malcolm designs into his buildings to be the people that keep it clean, to be the people who grow the fruit and vegetables in it, from the role that you have in the community. So from our utilitarian perspective, our identity, and then our experiential, there's a whole world out there that is exciting in an experiential way. The Wadi Bay, where I live, was nothing but a cold piece of sand for as long as I've been in North Edinburgh until lockdown, and now it's an incredibly busy urban swimming centre. And the beauty of it is that nobody yet is trying to sell you anything there. The council haven't tried to upgrade anything. You still walk over a broken wall down into it. There's no plans to put in infrastructure. It's just a community space where folk, depending on how hardy they are, go swimming like me for about 3 weeks during the summer or all the year round. But we can get these experiences by through other means than buying from these the globalized marketplace of novelty. So I think that's really important. I think the other important element, so things are going to, can be okay. There's a positive vision here. I think when we look at solutions, we have to keep reminding ourselves, and this is something that that I'm getting clearer at my own point, but if we go back to the way that Craig introduced this, within net zero, all the net zero solutions are technological. We'll have these magic carbon capture and storage, we'll have magic hydrogen, we'll have magic offsetting, we'll have magic new ways of batteries. And all of these things don't play, all of these technologies won't save us. What will save us, what will give us is the mindset. Technologies are always support the goal of the system and support the goal of the owner. So if the goal of the system is GDP extractive capitalism, GDP growth extractive capitalism, then electric battery cars are not the technology that's going to solve us. We'll end up with more and more hydrogen, more grey hydrogen, and various descriptions. What will save us is mindset solutions. So those mindsets of rejection, reduce, reuse, repair, and recycle. And I'll put recycle not actually so it should be anywhere near those other ones. It's way down in its impact, way down. There's some brilliant work by Walter Vermeulen from Utrecht, who looked, there was 35 different R's that he could find. And I would challenge anyone to be able to remember all of them, and looked at the impact of those. And it's all about reject and reduce and then reuse. We should be doing them in different font sizes all the way down. And right in the distance is recycling. In fact, only one thing that's less impactful, and that's remining. That's going through all mine tips and finding what goods you can find in it. So I think that's really important when you're going out there advocating for change, is that we keep calling out recycling now. We're not allowing that to become a solution from our providers. So what we're talking about systems change here, I think if you and how to do that, if we look into the making it happen section of the book, what I have there is we've got 7 different things that are set out, and this is where I would have done things differently, and I'd maybe to take a note of that. We see at the top of making it happen is set out an explicit policy of deconsumerization and promote the benefits to individuals. Okay, well, how do we make that happen? Well, we have to make that happen by systems change, so that we have the infrastructure and the new institutions that are required. We talk about a new national consumer agency. New systems require old institutions to be torn down. The finance sector, maybe literally, land, and the legal system, and new institutions need to come forward. But if we listen to the science of how you change systems, then we listen to Donella Meadows, this wonderful, amazing academic from the United States, who to start off in many ways the degrowth movement, where she puts out the leverage points on a system. And if you want to intervene in a system and you want to change it quickly, the worst thing, the slowest, least powerful thing you do is give money to a situation, change policy. And of course, that's all that the UK government are doing at the moment. But unfortunately, the SNP government are very much down at that level. Just finished a chapter talking about how the SNP have absolutely avoided any institutional change in Scotland. And that's a hugely important thing, because it means that we can set all the wonderful targets that we want. We can look to change child poverty by as much figures as we want, but we will continue to fail to do it unless we adjust the fundamental issues. So within deconsumerization, to change this system, to create the institutions, to create the space, to create the circular economy, to have these places where we can exist in the wonderful things designed by Malcolm, then we have to change the system's goal. Okay, the Donella Meadows says there's two more powerful interventions. The last one I don't quite understand yet. I think it's a little bit Buddhist for me. I'll get there eventually. So we have changed the system goal, because all of the infrastructure changes and all the systems change to create the goal of that system. So as a quick mind experiment, we have a perfect cycle and active network in Scotland, perfect infrastructure for that already. It's called a roads network. Because it's a roads network, the goal of it is the roads, to move goods and vehicles up. If we change the goal of the roads network to move people and wheeling and walking, then we don't have to build new ones. We can appropriate that infrastructure there. So the power of the systems goal is amazing, because it reappropriates the existing infrastructure. Where we're stuck at in Scotland, and this is where we get down to your role and our role within Commonweal, is that we have leaders who cannot think about there being a new systems goal. They're trapped by their thinking. Okay, so Kate Forbes, and unfortunately we have to call people out now specifically, because they are the ones who control this. From my understanding, she's wedded to this GDP growth model and cannot understand that there could be some other goal. Boris Johnson clearly cannot understand. And that's understandable, because he would never have become a successful Tory politician if he challenged GDP growth within his movement up the party. It'd have been turfed out. He's a lefty, throw him out. Never have made it forward. So I think that's something that we have to talk about, a new systems goal in Scotland. And that new system goal is staring us enough in the face and has been well worked out. It's the Wellbeing Economic Alliance's version of a wellbeing economy for Scotland. So these notions of participation, and I knew as soon as I said I'll try to remember all five, and I've forgotten four of them. But the different systems goals that we have, Craig can maybe help with. Sorry about that. We have different new systems go through the Wellbeing Economic Alliance. I'll come back to those. But the problem that we've got is that the SNP are stuck with GDP plus Wellbeing Alliance, instead of seeing wellbeing economy instead of GDP growth. So Nicola Sturgeon and Kate Forbes are stuck thinking we can solve and cure GDP, the problems of GDP growth with well-being, where this new systems goal that we need to work to and have is well articulated within the well-being economy. So what I would say to you in here in your role you've Kate as an accountant, and I think you've got down to your training there. So what we need to do within the systems change for deconsumerization is at every opportunity where you're in the face of power, all of us, and we all have one relationship, or maybe a couple of spheres out when we speak to power. We have to reinforce the need for a new systems goal and give what that new systems goal is. Through the, in particular, we have to call out the downsides of GDP growth. I mean, how can GDP growth be used to solve the climate crisis when it's the cause of climate crisis? So on everything that you do, we're talking about a new systems goal, with all the people, all of the power out that's available, and then also really importantly through the votes that you make in the marketplace. So the things that you do buy, the classes that you do that you're taking to build up your skills, every one of these reinforces these alternatives, and again, puts the message there about how we can change the system. But we've got to change the system goal, and in Scotland, we've got to change the ability of our leaders to imagine that there's